Ladies and gentlemen, good morning or good afternoon, depending on when you're based and when you are listening to this, obviously. Today with us, we have Chris Leach. He's the founder at the Continental Exchange. And the Continental Exchange is an expert network that matches industry experts with paid research based short term phone consultations. Chris will be joining us shortly. Very keen on listening a little bit about what he does. Chris, thanks for joining. I've gone ahead and given a little bit of background on you and the Continental Exchange, but I mean, the floor is yours. Go ahead and tell us who you are and what you do.
Yeah, happy to. So I am Chris Leach, founder of the Continental Exchange, and I guess I'm the CEO. I'm really like the chief everything officer. It's really interesting. Like I have a bit of what would you call it, like imposter syndrome, where it's like someone's like, you should put CEO on your LinkedIn. I'm like, I am just trying to figure this out day to day. Like I feel like I'm making it up. I'm making up the playbook every single day, because there are no rules when you start up a company. Um, but anywho, so. I guess my background is, I mean, if we want to go way back, started with like internships at Bloomberg and basically a stock exchange kind of track where worked with just, I mean, gosh, we're going all the way back to internships, but I think that kind of plays into how I'm thinking about this company now as well, though. But basically, started with internships with Bloomberg, worked on some of their data teams where they worked to like publish basically exchange data out to each Bloomberg terminal. Worked at stock options exchange, back to Bloomberg, and then did not go to work at Bloomberg. Went to a startup in San Francisco that did athletic training software, and it was an absolute disaster. Basically, turned down a really good job to go chase a startup dream, and I'm talking like real startup, like slept on a couch.
Okay.
Worked and the company made almost no money. So was in a very like kind of homeless, sketchy portion of San Francisco. So that was one of those like fail fast kind of scenarios. So I left that company pretty quickly, and I promised the story will come full circle to what I'm doing right now. But I was, living in San Francisco. My next door neighbor happened to work at a hedge fund that was pretty prolific in shorting the entire market in the 2007, 2008 crash. So this guy was like a kind of savant investor. And it turns out that his sister lives one neighborhood over from me, where I grew up in Montgomery, New Jersey. And basically, I was kind of just out in San Francisco looking for a job at the time. And, you can pick up any number of us. There's so many just random SaaS companies out in San Francisco, and anybody will hire you to sit on the phone and do 100 cold calls a day. And I was like, I am just not going to do that. That sounds horrendous. So this portfolio manager, my next door neighbor, was basically just giving me research assignments. He was like, "Well, what are you interested in?" I was like, "Well, I like aerospace and defense companies." He's like, "Good. Why don't you go read the 10K of like Lockheed Martin and Boeing and tell me what you think?" And I'm like, "The whole thing?" He's like, "Yeah, go read the whole thing. That's how you learn." So I basically started working with this my next door neighbor doing research on like literally it was public equities to start, but it was kind of just nice. Like I wasn't getting paid for it, but it just started my kind of interest in financial research. And I was working with this guy who was such a contrarian thinker about just how the markets work and how, you see this thing, he sees that. It was like I turn left, he thinks right for X, Y, and Z reasons, and he's fully justified in why he's doing that. So that kind of spun off my interest in financial research. And then gosh, dude, just complete like luck networking. I needed a job. Like when I ran out of money in San Francisco, I eventually moved back home into my parents' house and just needed a job and had an offer to go work at Third Bridge. Was just kind of networking, trying to get into like investment banking. That was too hard. Like I didn't have the right skills, yada yada. Ended up at Third Bridge and then did Third Bridge for 3 years. It was pretty cool. Worked with some really, really awesome people. Was in New York City, not getting paid anywhere near enough to really live in Manhattan, which is kind of crazy. Like I think back to how much they actually paid us and what we had to pay for in rent to like live and be around Manhattan was kind of wild. But did Third Bridge for 3 years, then went to work for Houlihan Lokey and basically in a very similar capacity. It was like running research for investment bankers. Then went back to Third Bridge and then helped them open up a Dallas office and then eventually started my own expert network after Third Bridge. I don't love how they treated me on my way out, so I'm not going to
Makes two
say
of us.
anything except to say that I do have a little bit of beef with them. So if anybody ends up watching this, they'll kind of know, but I'm not going to air that out here. But yeah, eventually started a network and have just kind of been in operations for about a little over a year now.
That makes two of us, with the only difference being that I didn't start a network. But, my beef, I think at this point, it runs long and wild with the industry as a whole.
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, if you look at it's really, and I've been reflecting on this too. Some of the people that I worked with at Third Bridge initially are like some of the best and brightest
Yep.
I've ever interacted with.
Same.
And it's kind of wild because instead of like rewarding your employees with what does everybody want? Well, you want more money, right? You're kind of capped in expert networking. You can't really get paid what you want to get paid, and you're working all these crazy hours with clients that like when we were working on the Bain accounts, if a client emails us at 12:30 at night, we kind of need to be up,
Hmm.
like getting back to them, working with them at the same hours that they are, getting paid a fraction what they get paid, which is kind of wild. But it's just strange to me that like all these amazing people kind of come into the industry and then they get out because there's just no career, there's no way to like earn what you want to earn. And it's really interesting. Like as you rise the ranks in expert networking, you become less about the research and more about like the people management.
Hmm.
So it's like the absolute savage killer earners that I've worked with were moving into people management positions and like getting further and further away from the actual research that they were really good at. And then they just got bored. So then they got bored and they were getting underpaid. So then they just leave and go somewhere else. And it's kind of like what you see at these companies, at least if I'm reflecting on what I've seen, the middle management of most of these companies are full of not impressive people at all.
Yep.
Like people that just hung on. They're just
You're
there.
gonna
They're
find
like the
some of the best
survivors.
or the worst people in there.
Right. Yeah, but the best people are going to want to go get paid more because
Yep.
they see how like strong they are relative to their peers. And I mean everyone it's not that money's everything, but especially if you're working in financial services and you're working crazy intense hours, you can see how much money you're generating and you're getting just a small fraction of that. Like I don't think that's a recipe to attracting anybody, and keeping them in the long run.
Without knowing what your beef is, and without naming any of my companies, because I have a pretty rich and diverse background with expert networks as well, and ongoing beef as well. So there was a point in time, and I keep on reflecting it quite a lot. There was a point in time where I was doing Sunday to Thursday, because that was still the schedule of the UAE back then.
Mhm.
Normal working hours from.
Booming. Dude, the UAE is going off for expert networking opportunities.
Yeah,
Like something's going, I mean, I'm not from that side of the world, but something's going on where that market seems to be moving and developing in a breakneck speed. So the expert networks out there, I feel like are starting to clean up right now.
I agree. I agree, but I mean,
Sorry, didn't mean to cut you off. Just got excited.
no, no, it's okay. I agree with you, but I still don't think they can do it the way I did it. And I mean, it's not arrogance, because I was confident on my research skills. I was confident on the team's research skills. We knew what we were getting ourselves into, and we weren't shook by any kind of project. And we were also not afraid to push back, right? So if there was a compliant issue with one of their projects, which is a very frequent phenomenon in the Middle East, uh,
Right,
we we were pretty confident in pushing back and putting them in their place. At the same time, I coached this very oftenly, but I was like, take fuck tons of risk. If they don't like a candidate because they think that he's too junior or whatever, and you're absolutely confident on them, which wasn't usually a junior issue, was more about a screening issue or
right,
time wise or whatever. My argument was always, look, if you feel 100% confident that that guy is going to be of value, tell them that.
right,
And that's, in my first expert network experience, that wasn't something that was taught to me. It's something that just sort of arose from it, because we started with a very rigid format of, this is the email template, do not divert at all from it. And
right.
from that point up until the point where I concluded my career with expert networks, at least so far, being me sending memes with profiles. So literally just a profile title within a meme
Bro, you're
format.
sending memes with profiles.
Yeah.
What unbelievable client service that is.
So I mean,
That cracks me up.
the relationship has changed completely, like a easy 180 degrees change, right? So from a
Right.
rigid email to flowers on birthdays, emails with
Yeah.
profiles, memes.
Dude, you're a research partner. That's what you became a partner to that client.
Yeah,
That's what happened. And there's, I think, a big difference between you having that relationship with that client and like 90% of the interactions that I have with just all these clients that I'm interacting with nowadays, where it's like you want that relationship where you're like really working with somebody that you kind of know, you trust, like it's a real relationship. Nowadays, what I'm starting to see is a lot of the consulting firms are starting to work with a lot of expert networks,
yep.
and you are just treated like as a vendor, you know. And I think the worst part of all this is that because it's pay as you go for the most part, like they can treat you like a vendor. They'll send you a project, you work on it, you spend however many hours. And like when you're getting contact information and stuff, you're sending outreach, you have to buy that. Like you have to go to a data broker to buy the emails that you're going to use to send out. Like you need to maintain the infrastructure you're using to send all these emails. And like I didn't recognize that until I started the business and I had to go out and buy all that content myself. But I'm like, hey, there's actual like a monetary cost here as well. Like this isn't just like, maybe when you're working with one of the large networks and they can just reach into their database and just pull one of like a bazillion profiles that they have. When you need to go and custom recruit everything, there's like a legit, and we can do that, right? Like we can go and kind of source into any market we want and have success, but there's a legitimate like opportunity cost and like a fiscal kind of monetary cost as well. So when clients do that, it really irks me. And I've had to like kind of dial back my frustration because I've written some very sharply worded emails to clients before where I'm just like, you wasted so much of my time. You asked for so much. I sent you 20 profiles. You didn't schedule any of them. I spent 15 minutes on the phone with each of these people. I could have done literally anything else with my time. But oh, your N was actually three. You only wanted three calls. Oh, and then you put 12 networks on the case as well. So it's like, why did you like there's a real opportunity cost on my end that I feel like the clients don't see. But some of the consulting firms now are kind of like training. I mean, these guys aren't a client of mine, but I remember like working with Ernst and Young. I thought some of their employees were just downright like rude to us. Where like we
Yeah.
would do so much work for them,
Pretty
and
common
then they'd
phenomenon
just be
for
like,
EY without
"Yeah,
me
well, I'd just
meaning to
be,
talk down on them either.
oh yeah, no, I mean they're not a client of mine. I don't even want to work with them, so I'll like that's fine. I don't want to work with. Like I've seen how they operate, but a lot of the networks want to work with Ernst and Young because they'll publish like over basically for the year. Here's how much we want to spend on expert networking calls, and then all the networks are like, oh, perfect. We can model off of this, and then project to our investors that here's all the market share we can get, and then it's like okay, well, when you're actually working with them, they want calls at like $800. They want to just do one credit or whatever that is, whatever negotiated credit is. The expert that they really want is going to charge two credits because he knows he's good and he's charging $750 an hour for his time. And then you need to go negotiate. And oftentimes, what you'll hear from your senior leadership is just like, go take the call, get the call. And it's like, why would we do that? We're spending 750 bucks. We're going to make $100 on
Yeah.
this. Do you know how bad that margin is? Like, this is just bad business. But that's kind of how it works. Like they say jump, you say how high, which is part of the game, like when it's a service industry. But I think some clients like that need to be like throttled and regulated. But it's up to the big networks to do that, and they don't. Like the amount of times I wanted to like take a stand and be like, we're done working on your case because I sent you 30 profiles. You provided zero feedback on them. I had my entire team going crazy over this. Everyone's stressed out because we have these massive productivity targets, and the productivity targets for my account just went up and is now at like basically an unfeasible level. And we're assigned to just work on this one account, and you guys are treating us like garbage. And we're just going to let that happen. Like, to me, it seems like the leadership at times is not as connected with like the actual what goes on the ground. But I mean, that's like any industry. But sorry, that was like a little rant because
No, no, it's a good rant.
it's very frustrating when that happens.
It's a good rant, and there's two side questions that pop up from it, right? So most of the times you see people from the expert network industry through a stroke of luck or genius or whatever, result finding themselves in a pretty big consultancy dealing with the memberships and the partnerships of the expert networks. And you would expect these people to know how expert networks operate and sort of push back on the consulting side from internally, amongst many of the other things that they're supposed to do, right? So their duties do
Right.
change, yes, but they do have an understanding of the expert network industry, and you should would expect them to sort of bring their perspective into these consultancies and have them change a little bit their modus operandi, and they don't. And my argument to why they don't is because they had no real expert network experience
Right.
in practice. They were completely incompetent in what they did and just were one of those middle management people that you mentioned were completely incompetent. And the second question I have to ask you on that is, you have the big players and you mentioned them as well, and the big players do not discuss this at all. And the real question is why. In my opinion, they don't discuss it because it's profitable for them not to discuss it. They don't want to disrupt this partnership they have. And you see big names like GLG, and you look at the financials of GLG, and the financials of GLG make you wonder, how is it still a functioning expert network, right? Uh, but at the same time, such a big brand name that even if it doesn't push back to the big consultancies, it can pull in from smaller new accounts that are coming into the market just by leveraging its brand name. And granted, it's more
Right.
expensive, but they love the brand name. So, what do you think about that? It's two theses.
So I think I'm tracking. So I'm gonna address the second question first because or the second point first. You're talking about like people wanting to work with a very large network because they have the brand name and they're trusted, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think with the proliferation of firms like Inex One and ENC, that is going to go away. Like, it's very corny to say that things are being democratized, right? Like, because in different parts of the world, democracy just doesn't work. It shouldn't be pushed. But it's kind of like the democratization of, I mean, it's kind of a metaphor for saying like,
Yeah,
you know,
yeah, no, I got it. I agree with you. It's just
everyone can get right like everyone can get involved if you have the idea, the will, the like whatever to go play this game. Um, and I think we're starting to see some of that get eroded. Like I got hit back by we're starting to do like a bunch more biz dev and we're gonna go just work to get our own clients and just kind of build out our client roster. And I heard directly from a consultant where he was like, "Hey, like we would love to work with you over XYZ large firm because we want a firm that actually has some skin in the game."
Mhm.
And I was like, that's a really interesting thing to say because I think, you know, at the biggest end of the scale, like all these experts are kind of just profiles in a database. You know, they're barely real humans, which is kind of strange to me. And that also plays into like why experts get fatigue or you hear
Mhm.
about experts just like, gosh, if you troll any of the Reddit forums on expert networking, you just
Yep.
hear people that are so pissed off about the industry. And it's kind of funny, but it's also true. Like I've even been reached out to for just stupid projects. And I'm like, bro, you or girl, whoever, like whatever analyst name is, you have no idea what you're doing, and you shouldn't be reaching out to me. Like if I spent any time on this, it would be a complete waste of time. Like you're allowed to make mistakes, but at the same time, like there should be some level of competency that needs to get hit. But again, that plays into what we talk about, where it's like the best talent leaves the industry. With that talent goes the best practices,
Yep.
people that know how to do this well. So that's kind of what I'm envisioning here with the Continental Exchange. I mean, to give like a soft sales pitch for what we're doing. But the correlation I make is like when I went into work in investment banking, the best bankers were the bankers that started with associate, senior associate, vice
Mhm.
president, senior vice president, director, managing director, senior managing director, and then those guys and gals were like the gangsters of that world. In expert networking, you kind of like show up at maybe like an AVP level and then you get out. and then you go somewhere else. So you try
My
and flake
argument
off
is
and
they
you go
force
into
you
like,
out.
well, I mean, they do force you out because you're seeing how much you earn for the firm. And I mean, part of it's also like if you look at how big some of these very large firms are, they're super bloated. There's so much technology that could be used to automate these rote tasks that humans don't really need to do anymore, right? Like I don't need to be if I'm going to go and grab emails from a database, it's just a straight rote process. I need to go and button click 10 times to get it done. Like I shouldn't have to do that. If I don't have to do that, that's time I can spend on other things. But a lot of what we need to do is like the workflow is just so scattered, and then all these companies have legacy systems that you can't actually automate, or they're just too afraid to put AI in because of like compliance restrictions, or maybe they work with government entities and then AI is like unregulated and all this stuff. So you never actually know. But I mean, what we're trying to do is like figure out how we can make sure that we stay in the research. Like I'm involved in research on every single project. I like the research.
I like the
I
research too, and people call me
like,
crazy, but I like the research too.
dude, bro, the research is fun. Do you know all the cool stuff that we get to learn just all over the map? So at some point, I would like for us to specialize. Like I want us to be really like an industrials and healthcare focused firm. I think that it would be really cool to be like the aerospace and defense go-to expert network because we have all the connections where it's like I think of the kind of back in the day, like with sell side kind of public equity analysts, where you would like if you're the hedge fund or you're the market maker, whoever, you're going to go pay to access these great researchers. That's kind of what I'm envisioning is going to be able to happen in this market. Like, good, bring in more expert networks. I think there's going to be room for a bunch of really good players and a bunch of really crap players at the same time. And I think at some point people are going to want like their own great researcher, not just like a
Mhm.
roving cast of characters down at the associate level that come in, realize the job is super intense, they got treated kind of poorly, and then get out of the industry. Like I think there's going to be room for people to like really value the expert network or like the relationship. I think there's still room for that. It's hard to find. We're still working on it, but I think it really almost starts with like some of the best relationships we had was like we'd work with the engagement managers and then the engagement managers would rise up and become like the principal partner level
Mhm.
and then they refer their whole team to us and like their team is trained to like work with our team and like our people and it was just a really good relationship. But when you have analysts coming in and coming out every like 8 months or you bring in a hiring class of 40 people and like two of them end up staying more than a year, like you can't really do that. Like it just doesn't work that way.
Nope.
Sorry, that I don't know if I answered the question, but that kind of just flowed. So
No, no,
sorry.
it's fine. It's fine. It's fine. You can take this. This is why I do these unscripted, right? So you can go anywhere you want with it. And I think it's a little bit. There's a little bit more value with doing unscripted sort of interviews, just because we could end up anywhere you want us to end up with. Um,
Yeah. You know where else we should talk about? We should talk about pricing for these damn expert calls
oh,
because pricing is just about exactly the same as it is when I entered the industry in 2018. And in any other industry, that is like absolute nonsense. Think about like inflation's happening all the time from 2018 to 2025, and I'm still just about charging like $1,200 per call while the expert rates are going up comparatively because they know what expert networking is. Like this is on the big players to start charging more, and they're
yeah,
too
but
afraid because they'll right.
I
They
mean,
they
so
can't. Their revenue is tied up so much with like their clients. They lose all their pricing power.
well, look, who's leading that industry? And I'll put it blankly, it's GLG, right? GLG has a pricing of what 1.5 per credit, and they haven't changed that for a while. At least for the big accounts I've dealt with, I don't know about it in smaller accounts, so I don't want to lie about it. But for big accounts that I've occasionally dabbled within their CRM, it was 1.5, and then you have a second player.
You're talking
Let's
like 1500,
1,500.
1500. Okay, US dollars. Yeah,
Then
I
you have a
mean,
second player that's at 1,200, and then everyone else that is a pretty big fucking player, but they're also trying to catch up to these guys, pricing it at 1 grand, like steady per credit, up or down 50 or $60, right?
craziness.
And it is because expert costs are rising, but if you don't have the main player um, sort of raising their prices, then you can't have any of the other smaller players raising their prices. And even if these small
Right.
players are also first tier firms, their main existence was to compete with the original first tier firm that had these steady prices. So
Right.
I think it's a problem because it's operating a little bit. I'm gonna say a little bit like a
Well,
cartel, right? Because you have one
yeah.
guy setting the price and everybody else following that price.
Yes. Say it. You could say it. I mean, it's true. There's a couple big players. I don't know if cartel is it because there's a couple other big players, maybe more like oligopoly, where there's a couple like I mean the real big players. There's probably five, six, seven. Like GLG is obviously at the top, just in terms of volume. But it is totally strange that the prices are staying exactly the same. And my theory is that you know a lot of the revenue is coming from like the consulting firms. At least if I look at my experience where so much of the volume is predicated on like we would carry some of the other like I worked with the consulting firms. We would carry some of the other divisions. Like hedge funds never did that well. Private equity didn't do that well. I mean, obviously they figured it out over time, but it's like we'd be way above run rate. Those guys would be under. So you kind of fall into this issue of, well, with these consulting firms, they could be like, well, I'm just going to take my business to somewhere else. And then we're going to that other firm is going to pay us less than you. So what are you going to do about it? And it's like I get it, right? That's what pricing power has to do with this. But when you think about like how much of the revenue from some of these expert networks comes from the consulting firms specifically, the consulting firms really have a lot of pricing power because if they want to go work with somebody else, they can go work with somebody else, and you can pretty much like drag and drop. Granted, are you going to get the same working style, process, speed, like quality? Who knows? But there are a bunch of other players, so it's like they're kind of controlling the pricing. But I really think that it's super lame that, I wish I had a more like economic word to say in that, but it just doesn't make sense that prices literally when I started in 2018 are just about the same that they are right now. Or I have clients, I mean, so it's interesting, like the Tegas model. I mean, it's kind of brilliant, right? Where Tegas will charge clients basically the price of the expert cost because they're going to package up that call as a transcript and sell it as a subscription. Like that's brilliant. But when I've worked with clients that want me to pay like Tegas pricing or want to pay like Tegas pricing, I'm like, I can't work with you. Like I don't have a margin if I'm charging you $500 for this call and that expert cost me $400. Like I'm going to spend $400 and then maybe collect from you at like a net 45 and like a net 60, something like that. And then I'm only making $100 in the transaction. It's like, it's really interesting. I don't know. I've
I mean,
rationalized us as
you
like a
can
short-term lender.
you can in
Hmm.
theory, but everything's gonna have a multiplier, right? So you can in
Right.
theory, but they're still gonna end up paying what they should have paid to begin with. Because if you're gonna do that, then you're gonna present them profiles. If let's say they want you to charge them 500 per credit, you're gonna end up giving a profile out of 1.75 or 1.5 or 2. And as a person, I'm a big fan of multipliers in general, but ultimately the charge will remain the same, right? So
Right.
there's a win for them if they do that. And I understand there's a lot of players out there that do that, and there's a lot of them that use aggregators that do that. And I also understand that there's some aggregators, not the ones you mentioned, but there's a third one that is actively pushing for the margin to be down to that level, like 300, $400. And that's an insane level to have those margins
Oh,
at.
wow. No, I mean that's crazy because I mean so it's different when it's and I guess I didn't have this perspective until I founded the firm and like have been staking my own money in it. But when you have to pay out cash to somebody and you don't get to collect that back with like your multiple on that for an extended period of time, like there was a month, I think it was like July or August last year, where I just straight up ran out of money. Like I was having a great time. Like we were connecting a lot of these expert calls. But as a small expert network, I need to pay people fast, or I'm just like a scam. Nobody trusts me. So it's really strange to think about my margins getting compressed even further and me essentially like staking money for my clients because that's what we are. We're like a short-term lender. We're going to pay the experts before we get paid from clients. So I feel like there's also a more sophisticated financial lens that could be put on this. And it's interesting. Like I'm starting to have some of these talks with my CFO about this because when we look at like how this works, like I'm basically fronting capital up front for my clients. They're almost like borrowing that money from me to go do the expert calls. But it's more the money. It's like the expertise, the compliance, it's like it goes beyond that. But ultimately, we're responsible for paying these experts first, and then we collect from clients at typically like somewhat of an elongated basis. So I really think that there's room to improve like the financial flow. I don't know exactly what it is, but I feel like there's some like technology within hedge funds that could potentially help bridge the gap here, where it's really like we should be working to move up the payment cycle. Like we shouldn't just be accepting net 60 because that's what's always happened. It's like if I have to pay the experts kind of quick, most expert networks are going to pay out between like a net 5, net 10 for the most part. We will try and pay people same day as best we can. Granted, how scalable is that? We're doing thousands of calls a week. I'm not really sure. We'll see, cross that bridge when we get there. But it's like I think in terms of other things that the industry needs to improve, it can't just be like, let's say I'm working for a consulting firm, right? The value chain is private equity fund contracts with management consulting firm then contracts with the expert network. When private equity fund determines that the diligence is over, consulting firm shuts it down, sends a bill out to the private equity fund. Private equity fund then pays the consulting firm, who then pays the expert network. And it's like, I don't know what their payment terms are. I don't know when the consulting firm is going to get paid from the private equity fund. So if we made an agreement that you'll pay me when you get paid, I don't know when that money's coming back. Like it's totally unpredictable. And in the realm of like financial services, let's think about like if we were to be lending money as a bank or something like that, that is so unacceptable on so many levels to be running like a sophisticated financial institution like this and have money out for that long or have it be kind of out for undetermined amounts of time. I can't think of anywhere else in business that that kind of behavior is acceptable. And I could be wrong. Granted, I'm like a new founder. I'm still learning how to do all this stuff and like what else goes on. But I think as we think about stuff that also needs to start moving up, it's like if we do the work, you need to pay for it faster. Like net 60 can't just be what it is because that's always what it's been. There are many more mechanisms now than there used to be to wire money, to move stuff that's going to clear in real time and it's going to clear quickly. So we're looking into like digital wallets where clients can like pre-fund accounts, almost put in like a quasi escrow account so that we can draw down from it in real time. But it becomes this kind of sophisticated, like, almost like how do we make our payments work for us kind of equation. And I think there's a level of sophistication that can enter the industry. So this starts to focus and kind of move more like a bank would. Like we're going to clear stuff in real time. Like I did the work, we're getting paid, we're moving quick, and that's just good for the industry. It's like just the velocity of cash. If you can move cash quicker, things are going to grow, things are going to boom. So I feel like we're kind of on the cusp of being able to facilitate a lot more transactions much quicker.
Well, that's a good problem to have, to be honest with you, and it's a good problem to have because it shows tenacity as a founder. And the reason why I'm saying that is because most of these founders, and I've known and met a good amount of them, um, are self-proclaimed, self-made, but the reality is they always had an X amount of backing financially
Right.
from someone or parents, bank, whatever that might be. So
Oh my gosh.
not necessarily
Sounds
self-made. Sorry.
sounds amazing. I wouldn't say it's self-made because there's so many other people that had been involved. But yeah, we're completely bootstrapped. Like and I think if you can, that's probably the best way to grow. Like I heard this from one of our kind of like mentors, where it's like the best way to fund your growth is through your customers, because then I don't have to give away equity, I don't have to take on massive debt, like things like that. So we're in a pretty strong position right now because I still have 100% ownership of the company. Um, but a couple people have knocked on the door and like they want to see what our financials look like, and I'm like, I don't know if I'm ready for you guys to come in yet. Like, I don't know if I'm ready to have another boss. Like, it's kind of nice being able to just run the ship as exactly as I want
Are they
to.
other expert networks or are they corporates? Are they private equities?
It's more like I don't even know what like series level these firms are, but kind of like exploratory capital, where it's like I think we're pretty risky. I mean, most banks won't even lend to us. Like we're not in existence over 2 years. I mean, we have great cash flows, but like most banks won't lend to us right now. Like I went and tried to look at some loans because I just want some working capital so I could just get a little bit of like support to pay out experts. and people don't want to lend to us. Like it's definitely a little bit risky. Even though within our first year of operations, we were profitable, like revenue generating. Most companies, you know, and I was able to like fund my life as well. Like that was the whole purpose of this too. Like I need to be able to live a decent life and like pay myself, and we were able to do that. So I just think it's yeah, it's interesting. It's kind of strange that those banks wouldn't play ball with us, but I think some of the like riskier, you know, risk taking equity investors are would be more interested because I mean, we generate a lot of cash flows. Like, and
Let me
we,
say something. So you mentioned Bain previously. I've always had a pretty big account myself. So I've taken on nearly all the accounts, but my main one has always been the big B. So
yeah,
she's always been my baby, right? And there was a point in time where they reached out in one of my expert networks to launch a DD on another
hmm
expert network, right? And I really wanted to do that call. So I gave it to one of my associates to handle the client comms, and I ended up doing the call. I had the call they wanted to gain insights on the other expert network. So I basically sold myself to them. Um, did it pro bono, not because I wanted to, but
all right.
because my current expert network didn't want me to get paid. I'll If that wasn't an option, I would have gotten paid for that call. And
What would you have charged? What's your bill rate?
so correct bill rate should always be 350 to 500, right?
Yeah,
What I would have charged is 1 grand, no questions asked.
dude, you're on the inside. I think 1 grand, 24-hour cancellation policy, hour minimum.
I had already sold myself on a premium to them, so I already knew that we were making 1 grand profit on that 1 grand, right? So we ended up doing a 2 grand profit on that call.
That's nice. Good work.
Yeah, but I like the 350 to 500. I love experts that do that because experts that do that give me the leverage to either put a multiplier on or not put a multiplier.
Right.
I can leverage the client in so many ways with that.
Well,
So anyway,
it's reasonable. It's super reasonable. Like no one's doing these expert calls to put bread on the table. Like this isn't like their only source of revenue. This is like a nice to have. You know, so for the most part, no one's doing these because they actually need the money. You know, maybe some people do. You know, maybe they made like bad investment decisions. They need to get out of it. They have the right expertise, whatever. But for the most part, it's like you do these because they're interesting. There's a little bit of extra money. 3 to 500 is like the perfect range because it gives you the ultimate flexibility with clients. Like it prices them appropriately. There's enough skin in the game for the expert, but we're also not needing to mark experts up to like a crazy degree where they're gonna scare off clients.
yep, I agree with you. That's it. That's the whole secret on the expert side. That's it. That's all you got to
Right.
do. That and answering your screening properly. So giving some value to the way these people present your profiles. Those are the only two things you got to do as an expert.
Right. Yeah. I mean, on the expert side though, like it's kind of we're working on a mechanism to follow up with experts and close the loop with them. Because we are working to just keep people in the loop better, right? Like we work on so many projects, interact with so many people. It's really tough to keep tabs and like close the loop with every single person we interact with. So we're trying to build a mechanism right now, and it's harder than you think. It should be as simple as like, yeah, let's just send an expert to close the loop with everyone. It's not like that. You have so much data flying around all your different ecosystems that you operate in. So that's something that we're trying to roll out like very soon. And I will say it's a little bit trickier than I thought to come up with a real solution for that. But I think closing the loop with experts is going to become like an important thing. Or you know, the expert networks are just going to just burn the bridges with some of the strongest experts.
So let me tell you a little bit about my experience with that. I didn't cover the bridges between myself and experts when I initially started in the expert network industry. I had a couple of really cool guys that I knew. I had them in my pocket. You know, we knew their rate, yada yada. I didn't even have to call them and screen them and ask them for availability. I just knew that I would give their availability and we would schedule it no matter what. So the screening was there, et cetera, et cetera. But there was a point in time where uh, when you're still young in the expert network industry, where you get conned every now and again from a couple of experts, right? And I think everybody has been through that experience. And there are some that till this day I know do expert calls that are one of the greatest con men that have ever lived. And there's some others that, just wanted a one-time gig and yeah, played the game, etc., etc. So I reached a point where I had experts call me at like 12, 1 o'clock at night from random locations like South Africa or Nigeria, uh,
Oh
threatening
God.
threatening to kill me because I didn't pay them for a written deliverable that I told them the feedback was that this was fake, right? So we've reached those levels.
Right. Oh my gosh. That's
So
terrifying.
it is. So the first few times you get that, it is really, really terrifying, and you have no idea how to handle it. But what I learned to do, and I managed to do it later on, was pre-position a little bit the situation. So yeah, yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. They might
Right.
want a written deliverable. They might want the call. If they want a written deliverable, they'll have to evaluate it before I pay you. Are you okay with that? And once you
Right.
fully break it down, so once you don't give them a gap to sort of try to cheat the system, then it's a little bit easier to handle. And there are times where I would have like the original deliverables and I would see some parts missing and I would just type in the part and then I would send it back to him and I'd be like, listen, I proactively did this. Can you tell me if it's correct or not before I send it to the client?
Right.
And he would tell me yes or no, or you know what, you put 41,000, whatever you're counting,
Right.
but the real range should be around 42 to 45. I just left it a gap. I just left a gap in it because I didn't know what to put. And I'm like, oh, okay. I'll just put 42 to 45 and send it back to the client. So you kind of have these little tips and tricks that you learn as you grow within the industry, right? And I really
Right.
feel that we're coming back to the original point that the industry itself is pushing out some of their best candidates out the door, with a couple of exceptions on a few that might have made it to senior management. But I mean, you can't really expect the whole industry to be saved by one or two or three good people in every expert network there is.
Right. Well, what's the industry about though? It's the research. It's like it's supporting research. And even even me, like in this founder role, I'm pushed into a lot of like real business operation type things.
Mm-hmm.
It's cool. Like I get to design a CRM. I get to handle the finances. Like when I meet with vendors for RFPs and stuff, like there's all that hardcore business stuff that needs to go down, business strategy, biz dev, whatever. But at the core of it, I'm still a researcher, right? Like that's what I feel like is getting lost a little bit. Where, but at the same time, it's like some people just don't care. They just want profiles. Like they just need the profiles and a call to speak with somebody for 60 minutes. So it doesn't care. But I think they don't care. So I think there still is like a section of the market that genuinely gives a crap about like the quality of the research that you're producing. So I think there's still room for somebody like you that's going to go and actually really care about your client. But let's say we put you into a people manager role and we move you up the ladder into like a VP role, and now you become more about like the operations and you're managing the accounts and you're overseeing the hiring class. You're not in the research anymore, right? All that skill that you have, maybe it's passed down to your teams. That's kind of your legacy, but all that skill that you developed as a researcher is going out the window because now you're turning into an operations person, which is a little bit different. So if you think about like move this back to the example of like kind of sell side analysts that you'd see running public equity research that the investment banks are buying, that the banks are buying, that the hedge funds are buying, like looking at that kind of, think about like your best Goldman Sachs research. Like that guy who's issuing the buy side report is probably getting paid a pretty good amount of money. There's still, I think, room for that within this industry in terms of just like how much we can generate in terms of cash. But to get there, you need to not have a gigantic bloated company and pay for a lot of other people that are not earning. You need to not be paying their salaries. It's impossible when you have like a gigantic company full of people that don't also make dollars because every dollar that you earn is now getting dispersed to somebody else and supporting them, which is just it's kind of sad. Like you obviously need people in the firm to do other things that aren't just earning. But I think some of these firms have just gotten pretty big, and like unhealthy, if you will. But you need some of that, and then you also need to be staying close to the research. Like if you want to be the good researcher, you need to kind of decide that you're going to do that. But currently, there aren't really many platforms for you to go out and like make a ton of money doing that. So you would have to move up the ladder into that operations position. But I think again, that's what we're trying to figure out how to do, where it's like, okay, let's take this aerospace defense example. Like I am consulting firm, I am investment bank, I am whoever. I need to go find the best expert network that does aerospace defense consulting, and I need some really niche stuff. Well, maybe my N is just 2 to 3 calls, but because it's super niche, we can charge you a lot more for it. And you need to access Chris Leach from the Continental Exchange because that guy has all the connections. That guy has everyone, it's kind of like the inside networker, if you will. Like that's kind of what I'm envisioning this turning into. It could be like a complete fantasy sequence. We'll find out in like the medium to long run. But it's like I think industry focus is where this goes. Because also, if you look at like if you look in investment banking, if you look in private equity, if you look in consulting, at the highest level, all those folks have market segments that they focus on. That's it. Like the partners, just the senior managing directors and industrials could just cover okay, I'm within the industrials division. I just do automotive aftermarket, or I just do specialty chemicals distribution, or I just do, like equipment as a service, business services, something like that. And I think if there's a move towards that within expert networking as well, where it's like you can become really specialized, you can make yourself very, very valuable to a lot of people. And like your research, your thoughts, your input, what you're seeing in the market become very, very valuable because you are like very deeply entrenched in that world. You actually have industry expertise. You're not just and the connections. You're not just like split second expert that knows how to go rip through LinkedIn and like read a project brief and understand it real quick. It's like no, like I get this stuff because I'm living in all these markets every single day. I'm not bouncing around from like place to place to place and all these random markets.
You might be right, but the only reason why I would not see that happening is A, the big five, and B, a bunch of smaller players coming in and trying that and then failing miserably, killing the reputation of any potentially actually good new player coming in wanting to do it on an industry specific. So that's a very interesting discussion. There's many ways you can look at it. I see your point, and potentially down the line, I could see it happening. I just don't see it happening anytime soon.
Dude, no way. No time soon. Let's go start somewhere though. But anywho, I gotta run because we just got sent a 30 call case. So very timely way to end the interview. But I gotta go chase some calls here.
That's okay. That's okay. I completely understand. I appreciate you taking the time to speak to me. It was great meeting you. Continental Exchange, pop in and your link. I'll upload it with the interview and we can take it from there.
You got it. Awesome. Thanks, sir. Good to meet you.
Likewise, all the best.
See ya. Bye.